Welcome to episode 28 in our series on Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's The Way of God, and we are in the fourth section of the book entitled Serving God, and we are up to chapter 9, which is the final chapter of this book, and this is entitled Circumstantial Observances and Blessings. And the Ramchal in this episode, in this chapter, is going to describe the reasons for make blessings when you perform certain actions. For example, when one eats, it is better to sanctify the occasion by making a blessing before and afterwards on the food, to show appreciation and gratitude for what God has provided. And the Ramchal is going to describe why this is so and what we have to do. So the Ramchal begins. Circumstantial observances are contingent on the various events that occur to an individual during his lifetime, depending on his particular circumstances. They can be related to food, clothing, other necessities of life, or social interactions. All of these observances are based on the principles discussed in previous sections. There does not exist a single concept in the world, whether it be a process or circumstance, in anything that exists, that is not set up and ordained according to what must exist to fulfill the purpose of creation discussed earlier. In order that it be attained completely, all these details must exist within the limits in which they were actually placed. The need for all these details, however, as well as the forms they assume, follows the various divisions and levels of existence, as well as the influences affecting them all according to their categories and levels as discussed previously. Commandments were therefore given for the various aspects of all these concepts in order to place them on the side of the good rather than on that of evil. When man's activities are kept within the limits defined by these commandments, these concepts follow the good, and benefit and rectification are brought forth and transmitted by them. If, on the other hand, these limits are not observed, such activities remain on the side of evil. They then result in the spread of corruption and pollution, as well as the great spiritual darkness that decreases the highest illumination. God then hides his presence all the more, and this brings about all the detrimental results that we have discussed earlier. All this depends on the intrinsic essence of the concept, whose limits are violated, as well as its relationship to man and its place in the overall cycle and chain of events, which continuously progresses towards the goal of permanently attaining this perfection, as discussed earlier. So the Ramchal is now going to describe the blessings recited after taking pleasure from worldly phenomena, for example, food. So the Ramchal continues. This is also the basis of the blessings ordained by our sages for all worldly concepts and pleasures. The basis of all these is the grace after meal, or birchas hamazon, which is ordained in the Torah. Its significance is based on what we have just discussed, namely that everything that exists in nature is a detail leading to the overall goal that all existence should attain perfection. The role that each thing plays in this depends on its place in the scheme of things according to its true nature. Man is drawn after his natural tendencies and acts according to the ways established for him. He must therefore constantly direct himself towards the service of God, in order that all his activities should in some way help him to attain this ultimate goal. This in turn depends on the manner in which things were set up. Thus some things serve this purpose directly. Others, such as man's mundane needs, attain this goal only after a long sequence, where many concepts result from one another. No matter which level a particular thing has, however, it should only be used with one intent. That is, that one should acquire some help in attaining his ultimate goal through it, even if only after 10 such steps. It should not be used for any extraneous purpose, such as fulfilling one's mundane desires or his worldly inclinations towards the superfluous. If every concept is then kept within the limits set by God's Torah, they are all actually helping man attain his goal and are considered elements of devotion. The Torah therefore taught us that after we enjoy food and drink, we must thank God and bless His name. This enjoyment is thus directed back to its true purpose, namely to serve as an aid in attaining the genuine goal discussed earlier. As a result of this, God's glory is increased through all these enjoyments, since His will is done and His plan fulfilled. This is the general significance of the grace after meals, or Birchat HaMazon, as well as the other blessings recited after eating. In order to amplify this concept, our sages also ordained other blessings before one partakes of any enjoyment. Before man makes use of the world, he should pronounce God's name over it, blessing Him and realizing that this good ultimately comes from God. He should consider the true nature of that good, namely, that it is more than a mere physical pleasure and material concept, but is actually something prepared by God to bring out the true benefit discussed earlier. When one initiates each act in such a manner, the act then remains on the side of good rather than on that of evil. It then serves as a means through which man is rectified and elevated, and not damaged and lowered as discussed earlier. Our sages also ordained blessings before the observance of various commandments, in order to make them all the more significant. We thus thank God for choosing us and giving us such great means of self-rectification. Through these blessings, the observance is elevated still more. As a result of the blessing, God also helps the individual fulfill the particular commandment completely. For this is the way things operate. The amount of help that one receives from God depends on the degree to which he motivates himself towards God, whether it is to a greater or lesser degree. This is true with respect to every possible act, whatever it may be. When one trusts in God, happy is he. Ended and completed, praise be God the Creator. And that concludes this wonderful book, The Way of God, by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And I hope all of you have enjoyed this as much as I have, and learned from it as much as I have. And I hope to perhaps continue these series on the Ramchal in the future, but just a wonderful, wonderful guidebook to our religion and how we should best serve God and also understand what we are doing. Again, once we understand better the reasons for how we perform our deeds and mitzvot and obligations, we supercharge them because there is true meaning behind them, and we kind of take that to heart. So that was, I really enjoyed that, and I thank you all very, very much for listening to this.